Hi, I'm Sue McCullough. I worked at St. Joe's Hospital from 1971, retiring in 2015. And over that time, I had many roles. I worked on the medical surgical floor and started the first monitored cardiac monitors. Then I became head nurse in 1974 in the new building, which was the new building, and of ICU. And then years later, I became the director of ICU, PT, OT, speech, and cardiac and pulmonary rehab. And then I also added respiratory therapy. And then I was director of critical care services when we moved to the new hospital, which included ICU, ER, outpatient, cardiac rehab, respiratory therapy, the sleep clinic, and the nursing supervisors. And it had the unique opportunity to help design and build the new hospital and go through all that hoo-ha controversy, which to this day, even though everybody was upset about it, was the best thing we could have done. It's thriving. And then in my later years, before I retired, I was the in administration as a physician liaison. So I worked with the medical college and helped train and get them established at St. Joe's, and all new physicians and hospitalists and all that stuff. So I have had a very interesting, constantly evolving career.
In your early years, you said that the hospital was such a community and a family. Talk about the different teams or events you guys had.
We always, I could go on and on about, how medicine has changed from 71 to current times. We didn't have any calculators, so you had to be sharp with your math. And then you always had somebody double check your calculations because you had to give the dosage of medicine, and we didn't have the computers to look things up. We didn't have pharmacy at night. So your math skills had to be pretty sharp. Counting drips of the IV to get the right amount. You had to use the roller and count how many drops per minute so you knew what dose you were delivering. Now it all goes on the computer and that does it for you. So there's a lot of, they weren't always the good old days. But the thing that we did have is we relied on each other. It didn't matter what department you worked in. The hospital had sponsored bowling teams, and on my team was a guy who worked in the kitchen delivering meals, Fred Burry, who was the CEO, president, and myself, who was a staff nurse. And I can't remember who the fourth one was. There were four of us, but and we had multiple teams and played each other. And then we had for charity, in the community, the firefighters played the police, and the physicians played the media. So it was the hospital hot handlers and the mighty media men. And myself and a couple of the nurses were the cheerleaders, and we wore our nurses' hats, and we wore white sweatshirts with big red crosses and little polka dot skirts, and our duty shoes. And those were our cheerleading outfits. So that was all for fun and for charity. We had baseball team. It was the nurses against the doctors. And all the nurses had shirts that said, "Behind every good doctor is a great nurse." And that's still true today. But we, sometimes, you got mad at a department or somebody, but the bottom line was, as evidenced from today's gathering, we liked each other. and we helped each other out and rallied if anybody needed us for anything, whether it be in the hospital or personal. We had picnics. We had Christmas parties, unsanctioned. We had, different departments, and we had potluck, and every department was required to do a skit.
Oh,
One year in radiology, Bob Phelan and Dave Lindholm were Julio Iglesias and Willie Nelson, and they looked the part. They were pretty funny. I know the ICU team acted out rhythms. So, our arms were up, and that was the atrium, and then our legs went open, that was the ventricle pumping, and so we had a pretty good time there too. But, yeah.
any specific emergency or memorable case, or great acquisition for a small town hospital?
Oh, God, there's so many moments. I gave a talk to the Rotary one time, and I said, St. Joe's is a hidden jewel. The people of this community just don't understand what a treasure that we have here. And it's constantly evolving. I mean, it's state of the art. And it was in the paper just this past week about being one of the safest and making, the biggest advances in safety, infection control, that sort of thing. We have medical college physicians practicing out here. I mean, it's great. I mean, yes, there's reasons you go to a larger academic facility, which is smart. You shouldn't be duplicating everything at every hospital. But for routine care, emergency care, being in the community where your family is, that's huge. And we have all the resources you could possibly need. But yeah, there was a couple of things. I know at the old building, the original old building, the ambulance entrance was on the ground level, the basement. The emergency room was on the third floor. Why? I don't know. But, so they would page 777, and that meant somebody had to go down to the basement to meet the ambulance to go with the patient and take him up to the ER, where it was usually the OR nurses that helped out. There were some frightening moments, especially as a young, brand new nurse having to go down in that creepy old basement. But fortunately, there were always the rescue squad guys that were there to help us. We did a lot of firsts. I don't know if I want to say it, but I was reading the instruction manual on how to use an external pacemaker while the doctor was inserting it. It was our first time using it. But it was successful, and the patient did well. But yeah, it's like, whoa. And there were things, I know Dr. Richard Gibson, we had to make things because we didn't have all the equipment back in the day. And so he would come up with different ways to make whatever equipment it is that we needed. We had to sharpen needles back then too. It was about 2 years after I started that they got disposable, but I remember Sister Walfrida thought I was too young to work on her unit. So she had me folding raids and sharpening needles for most of my shift, even though I took care of the cardiac monitors on my floor. But she didn't think I was old enough to handle the responsibility. So I sharpened needles. Um, yeah.
They have their own insurance?
A great
And she found out.
community hospital.
It was, is. I mean, there is, as with anything, the culture has changed in, both from the employer and employee standpoint, it's business. It's still a community hospital, and I think being as a consumer now rather than an employee, you get very good care, very caring people. But when you're done with work, you're done. Whereas back in the day, when you're done with work, you went out with your friends from work.
So, well, terrific.